not on Depardieu's side. It seems to me I am very much in agreement with what Julia was saying before. This is not a question of rich or poor people. It's a question of equality and how much people are willing to contribute. And in response to what was being said before, I don't think it's up to the people to decide what is their fair tax rate to pay. I don't like paying the taxes, except that I think it's fair to pay them, and it's decided by the state.
Yes, but if you
so people are not entitled to decide what is the tax rate they pay. If they do, they're evading taxes. If they leave the country, they're evading taxes.
Well, first, two things to answer to your question, to your remark. First of all, if everybody's taxed at 60%, the 60% is the 60% the same for everybody. The fact of having decided that there was going to be an exceptional tax of 75% for whoever earns more than €1 million, that is a specific, highly fixed rate for people who are rich, and the feeling which is given, and that was in the letter.
It's decided by a democratically elected government.
Yes, but
so it's decided by us.
Country is also a country that free people are in right to live. And the fact, that was a very sharp comment in the letter of Depardieu, I'm leaving this country not especially because of such and such, because you have decided to punish talent and success. And I think there is this feeling, which is very widely.
That's not the case.
What we have decided is to tax people in proportion to their wealth.
No, the proportion changes the proportion.
Are you, like, the question is, are you against...
Changes the proportion and saying after $1 million it is 75%.
Which is not the case yet. Which was not the case for Gerard Depardieu. It will happen in 2013.
Next
year.
So
it was not the case for Gerard.
No, but it is a decision. It is a collective decision.
Do you accept?
Let me ask you this.
Something, if I may.
Go ahead, Corynorhinus.
Sorry, just I wanted to say that the fact that there's so many people leaving France and put their the fiscal residence abroad is not something new. So, of course, this 75% exceptional tax rate for the crisis, let's put it this way, has pushed the whole question on the cover of newspapers. But at the same time, we're assisting to something which is a long trend. I wouldn't ask if socialists have a problem with rich people. My question would be maybe if French people have a problem with rich people, because in Belgium, for example, for instance, there is a prime minister who's socialist, and we are still seeing a very different approach to their fiscal policies. And at the same time, let me just put another question as well on the same idea. Is it not a wholly politically staged coup? We are actually talking about somebody who supported actively Nicolas Sarkozy on the last elections, and he was actually very active during the campaign. I remember covering the election, and he was in most of the big meetings with the side of Carla Bruni. And we're now seeing how UMP politicians are actually on his side on the debate. I think we're actually assisting to something more than just a tax evader, but we're actually probably seeing another leading role for Gerard Depardieu in this big film that is French politics.
There is definitely, though, a political subtext to all of this. By the way, there's a French novelist who's very famous in this country, Michel Houellebecq, who this weekend said he was returning from tax exile in Ireland.
Yes, well, anyhow, I think that the feeling that French people can have that their talent, their wealth can be a collective wealth for the country is not perceived in that way. There is a feeling, the ideology, that if there are poor people, it is because rich people haven't been taxed sufficiently. And I think it's a very bad
just on that
principle.
Point, just on that point, Gerard Depardieu entitled to a fairly sizable earnings as an actor thanks to the state subsidy for independent entertainment industry workers called the...
Intermittent du spectacle?
In French, it's called the Intermittent du spectacle. That's not to mention the fact that a lot of the movies he stars in are French and therefore heavily subsidized. You and I helped to subsidize his films.
I do have the feeling that with 145 million tax he has paid for 40 years, somehow or another he has made it fair.
Can I?
Julia
can I just make like a point, because I really think that like before having like big discussions, we really have to have the facts right. And like you are saying, and our colleague in Belgium is saying like that a lot of people are just leaving France, and this is not true. there are a lot of studies that have been made that show that tax evasion is pretty like high if you look at like people that have like secret accounts in Switzerland, but people like leaving France for like tax reasons is the number is pretty low.
So
like Nicolas Sarkozy.
So let me ask you about this point. Let me ask you about this point, because we saw the mayor of London has been repeatedly making digs at the French, saying come over here. Why does France have such an image problem?
Because you ask people, if you ask the mayor of London or the mayor of like Brussels or some like Belgium cities, they are going to say, yes, there is a lot of people that wants to come to London, and you have to do the same. If you are rich, do the same that all the other rich people that are coming to London. But we don't know the truth, and this is exactly the same thing for like fiscalists and advocates. That is that we have. Let me finish. Like we have more and more clients, and like everybody is trying to live. No, this is not true. They never give a number. So they have to give numbers about people that are evading right now. They never give a number. But give me a number. Like, show me a list with a number of people.
Okay, so that's the end of the discussion, I suppose.
Give me the number of people that come back. Like when Nicolas Sarkozy decreased the tax, we know that nobody come back with the bouclier fiscal.
Well, obviously, there are not enough.
How many people did come back with the bouclier fiscal?
Obviously, confronted to the reality, and the reality is that when so many people of talent leave our country, that is apportioning. Nobody's got it. So don't ask me something that nobody has.
All right, but there is a problem with your position. There is a kind of a contradiction in your position, because on one hand you want to claim that this is just a symbolic thing, giving this symbolic strange interpretation where the symbol is not that what France wants to do is make everybody share in the recovery, but the symbol is France wants to punish talents, which is not the case. But on one hand you want to say that it's symbolic, and on the other hand you want to say that it matters.
Yes, it does matter.
But there's a contradiction there.
No, there's no contradiction. I consider the wealth of our country, it is the French talents people. And when people of talent leave,
who makes this talent? Who made the wealth? Who made the wealth of somebody like Depardieu? The wealth of somebody like Depardieu was made by the people who went to the cinema, the people who paid their taxes. Talent is not an education system. Talent is not an individual thing. Talent is a social thing. Talent is socially produced, and that is the why it's taxed.
That is really the base. No, I'm sorry. That's very interesting, because we are really at the heart of our contradiction. You believe that there is only collective wealth. And I believe that what does bring collective wealth, it is the wealth of individuals. And the talent of individuals, you deny that it is an individual talent. You only want to see it collectively.
No, you're misrepresenting my position. I'm saying that the reason why income can be taxed is because talent has a social dimension. Alone, he would never have become rich. And therefore, that's why some income can be redistributed. He's very rich. 85% of what? How much is he earn? He's selling his house for 15 million. How can this man be the victim in this situation? Let's talk about who made his wealth.
Well, I think the real victim is France. I think that when France has such talents which could leave, that's the real victim of all this. It's our country, and the responsibility of the state.
France is not going to return the victim because Depardieu left.
The guilty person must be Depardieu. Is to have a policy that succeeds to attract talents and not to make talents leave. And instead of considering that the problem is the responsibility of all the individuals who are leaving and all these countries who are looking at France as being very peculiar, you think it is everybody else's fault. I consider that it is the fault of the state and of a certain amount of responsibles around the state who are not thinking, perhaps, instead of having a policy that makes our talents leave, we should have a policy that makes our talents stay and more talents come.
But just by the way, Belgium is nice for some, but Switzerland's better. Swiss magazine Bilan publishes a list of billionaires on its soil. 44 of those families French, led by the heirs to the Chanel perfume fortune and Brewers Castel. By the way, the numbers there make Gerard Depardieu's earnings look like chump change. But there is the question then, when you're looking at this issue of taxing the wealth, taxing money. Corynorhinus, France is a secular state, but there's still this sort of Catholic stigma when it comes to making money, it seems.
Well, I completely agree with this idea, because I come from a country which has got a Catholic tradition as well, and when we talk about money, I think it's quite the same feeling that most of the French have. But to take it in another level, to see the bigger picture, I know, and I've seen now that this is a very hot topic, because the debate has been very passionate in France about Gerard Depardieu. But it is true, the situation that most of the rich people, or a lot of the rich people of our countries, of Spain, of France, of Germany, Germany, they actually prefer to put their money in Swiss banks, or if not just away from the European Union, but we've seen this trend of money flowing from, I don't know, the UK to Luxembourg, or from France and Germany to Ireland. We've seen not just rich people, but at the same time big companies. We've seen, I don't know, Amazon, we've seen Starbucks, that they actually have their activities in one place, and then they don't evade, but they actually have this very sophisticated way of actually paying taxes in a country where the taxes are lower. Well, this, I think, for just to start with, I think people should know. Somebody who buys in Amazon, somebody who goes and have a coffee in Starbucks should know that maybe what they are actually drinking or buying, the taxes are going to be paid in another country. And then secondly, I think we have to really work towards a harmonization of taxation, at least within the European Union. If we don't get there, these discussions that we've now seen so passionate in France are going to be multiplied all over the EU.
And it's interesting because that passionate discussion took place here in France with an argument over Google. We saw at the beginning of the month in London the argument over Starbucks. Starbucks volunteering to give inland revenue £10 million a year more than is required by law. What they're doing, Starbucks, is legal.
Yeah,
but is it ethical?
Let's put it straight. Nobody here around this table, and certainly not me, has never in any way made the apology of not paying taxes or keeping the taxes leaving. But the only thing is, does Belgium has worse social security than the French one? Are schools less well managed than in France? Is the police less efficient than in France? I mean, it is our neighbors, we all know and go in Belgium, and their taxes are just more reasonable in some way. And we have made Europe, and the idea was that we have an harmonization of our taxes. Why is it that French, or a certain amount of French political responsibles believe that there can always be an exception?
But when we're talking about tax harmonization, should the focus be on individuals, or, as Tony was saying, should it perhaps be instead on corporations?
Definitely both. And I am very shocked that Google has a policy consisting in trying to make optimization all the time, and even the president of Google saying that that is capitalism. It's certainly not my conception of capitalism. But the only thing that we are supposed to try and find what is more or less an average level of taxing, which makes that the only policy of these companies is not just to make optimization, but to be in normal situation of developing their activities in Europe as any other European firm. But it is certain that we're supposed to make a European harmonization of fiscality, but certainly not making the harmony around the highest and the most non-typical tax rates of all Europe.
Do you at least know that the income tax rate is lower in Belgium than is higher in Belgium than in France? You know?
Yes, I do know.
So
that's
it's higher,
certainly not why it's Belgium.
You're not going to argue that we need to harmonize fiscalization, like with lower tax rate, taking the model of Belgium rather than France, since the tax rate is higher in Belgium on revenues than in France. You know?
The policy of Google is not to be taxed in Belgium; it's to be taxed in Luxembourg and in Ireland. So I don't quite understand your point.
If you look about individuals, because tax harmonization has not just to be about corporations, but also about individuals.
Yes, and about individuals, the tax on fortune is less high in Belgium than it is in France.
Yeah, but
just a minute ago, because we're a bit short on time, Julia Kaji, we were mentioning the issue of how there is this sort of Catholic idea with making money and all of that. You're just back from the United States.
Yeah.
Right now, huge discussion as they approach that fiscal cliff at the end of the year. This idea of taxing the rich over there, is the debate similar to what we've seen around this table, or is it very different?
Well, the debate is, like, in a sense, like, different because the tax rates are lower and the level of inequality is higher. And despite this fact, the debate is more passionate. But I want to underline something, because when you talk about, like, the Catholic spirit in France against money, like in the US, they are known to be like the country of the self-made man, in which you are allowed to make a lot of money and everybody is going to ask you about your wage. And we all know that at the end of the Second World War, the marginal income tax rate in the US was higher than 19%. you know, and people they do not leave the country, but it was a difficult time, and everybody needed to do effort, and they choose to share the effort equally between people, and this is just what is happening today in France.
Carlo Invernizzi?
It seems to me that posing it in terms of the question of Catholicism really misunderstands the point, because it poses it in terms of culture as opposed in terms of rights. This is a question of law. It has been passed democratically. If people run away from the law, it is difficult for me to understand how the fact that some people don't want to obey the law is an argument against the law.
I'd like to give you an answer, perhaps. There is this extraordinary depth of France and so little effort of state to make its way of life of the state come a bit more reasonable. And if everybody shared the effort, the state, the individuals, the companies, everybody made its share of the job, perhaps everybody could
But that's precisely the point of making the rich people pay more.
Well,
that's precisely the point. If everybody has to share the same amount, so proportionally rich people have to pay more.
No, more not in rate, more in quantity. That means the same rate for everybody, not exceptional
So you are
rates.
against progressive taxation?
No, I think there is a certain level where it is dissuasive and it is confiscatory. And I think the concept is a concept which is obvious when we see the result of it.
Well,
but I think it is very important also state stops spending as much as it does. And that would be a very good signal too.
And we'll get back and figure out the numbers and get all of Europe sorted next time. But I want to thank you very much for now. Leonidas Kalogeropoulos, Julia Cagé, Carlo Invernizzi, and Tony Corynorhinus, who joined us from Brussels. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.